Greetings, gamers. Welcome back once again for another episode of the G3 podcast. You're here. We got the entire crew for episode 110. We are at 110 episodes. I still can't believe that. Here, recording on March 2nd, 2024. I also can't believe that it's already March of 2024. That's kind of crazy to me. But regardless, you got the entire crew. We're gonna start off a little differently tonight. You got the one, the only
Killionaire. Unfreaking believable. Hail to the king.
my liege, Mr. Snipe 90. What's going on? I threw you off with the order. Yeah. Hey, wasn't ready. All right, all right. Well, yeah, we're gonna talk about some stuff. Make sure we're gonna have some valid feedback based on, especially the news that we're discussing tonight, from none other than Mow Them Down. This, we are not doing this live, Mo man. Remember what was the name? What was the name of that game? There was some indie game that we were looking. It was like, based on like 80s or 90s action comedy. It's like Mo Man. When you know, you know. Ladies and gentlemen, and rounding out the trio tonight, you got none other than
Ice, ice, baby. Ice, ice, baby.
known as Ice on all things gaming and social media, and that's us, Gaming's Greatest Generation, or at least the G3 podcast. So, another relatively short week in news, but we're gonna go ahead and bring in a topic that we unfortunately had to table last time. But let's unfortunately dispense with the bad news first. There's not going to be any graphics on this one, so you guys will just have to kind of bear with us. SIE, Sony Interactive Entertainment, went ahead and announced that they are yet the newest addition to these round of layoffs that we're seeing industry wide in the development sphere. This one seemed, again, it to me, it's funny in a non-humorous kind of way, because the irony of this, that like every single time one of these reports comes out, it almost seems to get worse or more profound. And for me, in this case, SIE talking about they had to let go of 8% of their workforce, equating to roughly 900 employees across every region: Americas, Europe, Japan, Asian Pacific, and several studios were affected, to include Insomniac Games and Naughty Dog, and they even went ahead and shuttered PlayStation's London studios. And I was just like, oh my god! And that's not even to mention that there's reductions to Gorilla and Fire Sprite. So, um, I'll get on my soapbox and get off my soapbox real quick. I don't know what the f is going on, because when you are PlayStation, you are the 800-pound gorilla in the room that everyone's trying to catch up with. I mean, aside from Nintendo, Nintendo does Nintendo. But if we're going to argue that PlayStation has the highest gamer engrossment, gamer active user base, if you will, 120 something million consoles out there, tons and tons of accounts that eat, sleep, and breathe PlayStation, for them to go ahead and have these layoffs. I mean, it's kind of, one would think par for the course, but I think, again, the irony of it, like Insomniac, dude, they just put out Spider-Man 2, and some of the numbers that I saw, they sold only 2.5 million, and I'm doing for anyone on the audio, only being in quotes there, only 2.5 million copies of the game within like a day or two of its release. But up to now, I believe they're up to 10 million copies sold, units sold, and that equates to something stupid like $700 million, I think the math that I did. So how they're going ahead and doing layoffs at Insomniac, which clearly met the mark of what was previously released of a, I think it was like a 2 or 3 $100 million budget for Spider-Man 2. Like how those guys are getting touched right now, and they're inarguably PlayStation's powerhouse, is just it's incomprehensible to me. And then for PlayStation to shutter one of their studios, one of their more longtime studios, and one that did a pretty good job with. Um, oh my goodness! Of course, the name's escaping me. I should have took a look at that before. They made one of the latest VR games for PSVR 2. It's like London Crooks style, but it had pretty decent. I mean, for the population of folks that use PlayStation VR 2 or PSVR 2, it had pretty good reception. I'll find that while one of you guys is talking, but let's start with. Oh man, let's rip that band-aid off. Mr. Mow Them Down, why don't you go ahead and tell us about how this is so terrible for the state of the industry and your corporate take on it, if you will. Yeah, and Blood and Truth was that title. Okay. Yeah, and Blood and Truth was the title I was trying to think of there. Came out in 2019, and again, from what I heard, got pretty good reception. Snipe, what are you thinking about this with in general, Insomniac, London Studios? I mean, Gorilla and Firesprite getting hit like so much of PlayStation here. Is it was should anybody have seen this coming? Yeah, and like it's so friggin' depressing at this point. And like I've heard so many people go ahead and talk about how it's like, oh well, this is kind of like to what you were alluding to. This is the ramifications of when they plussed up the studios so much during the pandemic and everything. And I was just like, but like so maybe people view things differently than I do. Like the pandemic, whatever you want to think about it, right? Stay at home orders and this, that, and the other. Like, I don't understand how businesses thought, hey, now is the time for us to increase our hiring because people are spending more money. Like, there should have been an obvious knowledge base, but there should have been an obvious knowledge base of like, hey, people aren't always going to stay home. And I mean, I can not that not that I'm trying to, be any kind of which way about these layoffs. I hope that that is exactly what it is, though. I hope that that is the ebb and flow, if you will, of the post pandemic. Now, they're starting to see, oh, purse strings are getting tight. We got to go ahead and let some folks go, and this that, and the other, and it's not alluding to a bigger problem that is very poor financial management and expectation management on the part of these companies on what they want for their ROIs. Well, and so if that's the case, then in this particular aspect, I hope that PlayStation learned that lesson from the Helldivers 2 simultaneous launch on PC, and they're going to start actually going forward with that, planning for that to be the way forward, simultaneous releasing, so that way they can make that most bang for buck on the initial release. Because otherwise, like this, who I was listening to. One of IGN's podcasts earlier, and somebody asked it very poignantly, like who's going to be there left to make the games? I think it was who I I can't remember. I can't remember the producer's name, but it was one of the producers of the Final Fantasy series, and they basically said this is why our Final Fantasy games are so good is because we keep that talent pool. We sacrifice and do what we have to do to keep that talent pool, so that way there's a sense of job security and everything, and they can focus on what actually matters, which is producing a quality game. Um, Obviously, like each of these has almost been its own thing, right? When we talked about the Microsoft layoffs, they they predominantly pointed to that being because of redundancies in the merger, the ABK merger. This one, I don't know. I know PlayStation went ahead and acquired four or five different studios that we're talking about over the past couple of years, but like these were, to my knowledge, smaller studios. There shouldn't have been a lot of redundancies or any of that same excuse. So unless it was just flat out hubris on the part of PlayStation or the Sony leadership to go ahead and think, well, and that one was disgusting in its own right because literally, I don't know how there's not lawsuits right now for that with all those layoffs because PlayStation, Sony, whichever entity you want to call it, went ahead and paid extra on top of what would essentially be the business asking price for that developer in order to incentivize and keep talent on. But then within like a year, something to that effect, they went ahead and they let go of a ton, like several hundred employees, and it was like, something doesn't add up there. Like you went ahead and you paid all this in order to go ahead and keep the talent on, but now you're just letting the talent go regardless. Like I feel like something contractually should have came back to bite them on that, and maybe we have yet to see the finality of that, laid to rest. But I don't know. It's very upsetting to say the least, and I hope that all those folks get to land on their feet. I hope that this is yet again another catalyst that demonstrates um, that we need to have a union among game developers across the board, across every corporate tier and corporate structure that they fall in, so that way they can go ahead and hopefully have that sense of collective bargaining to stick it to the man, so these companies can actually deal with sacrificing in other places rather than the employees that actually make their product. Because again, if you don't have enough employees to make the product, what the hell are you doing? Like, there's just no sense on having a business anymore, as far as I'm concerned. But maybe I see the world through some jaded lenses. Um, Speaking of jaded lenses, I I don't think there's any type of which way to look at this besides holy crap, do we now have a potential game of the year nominee already within the first 2 months of the year? And I'm talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This thing has been lauded and applauded across the board. Unfortunately, only available on PlayStation 5 right now, which has raised an eyebrow or two. Yeah, I mean, it's raised an eyebrow or two on as far as the Xbox user base. Like, hey, Phil Spencer went out there and had this, great meetup with Square Enix and talked to those folks. And I don't know. I've heard some rumblings that this may be something that was preconditioned contractually, like not necessarily. I don't even think it's, and here we go with the camera again. I don't even think it's necessarily something. I don't know if it's something on Sony's part or PlayStation's part. I think it was maybe literally something in general. I don't know. I don't know. But nevertheless, it's disparaging that it's not on other platforms. That being said, it's got a 93 top critic score on OpenCritic and 100% critics recommend. Um, I, man, I've never been a Final Fantasy guy, and I've heard from a couple other people who are in the same boat that this was the one that they dipped their toes and they were like, "Oh yeah, this is good. I need to try more Final Fantasy as a result of this." Now, not to say that the old like pixel type Final Fantasy games are going to go ahead and have the same type of resonance, but what do we think? What do we think, Snipe? Is this going to be in that Game of the Year list later? Hmm. Are you talking about Village or RE4? Yeah. Yeah, that was a Game of the Year nominee. Yeah. Uh, hey, PlayStation 5s are out there in the wild. Just get your hands on it, and you're good to go. Now, if they were to go ahead and release it on PC, all right. There you go. Just one more thing to spend money on. All right. Yeah, there you go. And Mr. Mow them down. Not. Well, you can't really say you're not a PlayStation player because now you have a PSN account or a PlayStation account. Ah, damn it, Helldivers. Which first one are we talking about? No. I was gonna say, are we talking about? Yeah, which one are we talking about? Are we talking about Xbox side or PC or? This is the remake. Yeah, so we got on Steam Final Fantasy 14 online. No crap, that's online, so they're gonna put that out there. Final Fantasy 7 remake intergrade. And we've got Final Fantasy 7 Ever Crisis. I'm not sure if that is, um, if that's a mainline title, if you will. Again, this would probably help if I was more of a Final Fantasy fan. But yeah, the fact that they've got Final Fantasy 7 remake intergrade on there. They got a couple other Final Fantasy titles on Steam at least. Oh wow, it looks like they have almost all the original ones on there. So I mean, you got an opportunity. Um, Now is as good a time as ever to maybe maybe Final Fantasy will be my PC only franchise. We'll see. Um, but yeah, so there's opportunities there, and once again, this one's looking pretty good. Scrolling through the over 100 reviews that have come in for this game, and the thing just came out uh, on the 29th of February, the leap year day, and it's got some banging reviews. So hopefully, we'll see that at the end of the year. What we unfortunately won't see at the end of the year, but we probably will see uh, beginning of next year, most likely somewhere around March or later. And this is going to be pretty much the big segment, the rest of our talk for the show. Uh, we've had a lot of stuff come out, a lot of rumor mill, if you will. But now it seems more so than ever that there's a lot of solidity to the announcement of the successor to the Nintendo Switch coming out as soon as March 2025. Supposedly, and the latest that we've got, and I mean, stuff has been leading up to this, right? So we've had discussions or seen stuff about Nintendo may have gone ahead and demonstrated some of their new Switch hardware at Gamescom last year. We have a lot of reports talking about they're going with another LCD type screen rather than the OLED, which I'm not surprised by if they wanted to have several iterations, kind of like they did with the original Switch. A lot of folks were talking about backward compatibility for it with this generation of Switch. And so now the latest is basically we have a report out of Nikkei, which, as I have learned from through previous stuff, is basically a Japanese, like a financial consultancy slash reporting firm. They went ahead and said that the Switch's successor won't launch until March of 2025, with the chief reason being to avoid scalping. Now, I don't know what lick of difference that makes if it is, the highest selling console of this generation, if you want to call Switch part of this generation, even though we've already said kind of Nintendo does Nintendo all by itself. There's also talk of them trying to go ahead and presumably through the hardware production side of the house secure something like 10 million Switch 2s. Yeah, so that they can go ahead and have ready stock available to ship out. This brings a lot, but let's just kind of narrow it down of the stuff that we know and the stuff that we hope to see. What is it that you guys are hoping that the Switch 2 is essentially going to be and be capable of? And we had to save this topic from a previous episode because we had to make sure that Snipe 90 was on here. So Snipe, take it away, baby. What is it we're looking for in a Switch 2? Okay. And yeah, for memory's sake, the first Switch or the Nintendo Switch launched March 3rd of 2027. So if they were to go ahead and launch, day and date, let's say on March 3rd or whatever the equivalent of that would be. Now I want to click ahead and see what March of 2025 looks like. Um, yeah, I mean, let's just say they launch anywhere in that week. I mean, basically, March 1st starts on a Saturday. So if they launch starting the 3rd, which is a Monday, um, you're talking 8 years since that's kind of par for the course with some of these mainline consoles, or at least what we like to think that we've seen with the competing hardware in the PlayStation and the Xbox and what have you. Um, Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I think they're going to be moving into that $400 to $500 price point. I got a different justification on why, but Mister Mow them down. What do you think? What do you want? What is it going to take for you to get a Nintendo Switch? Actually, you know what? Hold on. Before I say that, hey Snipe, what's the naming convention? What are they going to call it? Uh, yeah. Yeah, I was a personal fan, or I am a personal fan of Super Nintendo Switch, but yeah. All right, cool. So, Mister Mow them down. What's it gonna take for Nintendo to earn some of your hard earned dollars now? Like hardware wise or game wise? Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, for me, I definitely think if they don't call it the Super Nintendo Switch, then I'm gonna be really upset. Just because I mean, just because I didn't honestly think of that till right now, but the SNS console. But I mean, you think about it, and they went from, granted, they kind of went away from that nomenclature back when, but they had Nintendo Entertainment System, then they had the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and what was that? That was basically like a two times increase in hardware capability and stuff like that. Um, I would love it if they would do the OLED screens right off the bat, but clearly, um, from previous reporting, it looks like they're going with the LED, and then most likely they'll have a pro style version or something that's going to come out later with the OLED S the SNS OLED. I don't know. They're going to do something. But what I want to point to, and unfortunately I don't have the article up right meow, is there was talk, I want to say it was last year, early last year, there was talk of um, Switch going ahead, or Nintendo rather, going ahead and talking with NVIDIA about DLSS style tech in their next iteration of the Switch, which I think that alone would go ahead because that they're not dumb. They're hip to what's going on. Like they can see that some of the titles coming to Switch or even developed by first party are going ahead and pushing the envelope of what the Nintendo Switch can actually do, what it's actually hardware capable of. So even something like that alone, just adding some DLSS tech, I think would go ahead and allow a whole lot of potentiality for frame rendering and the interpolative graphics and everything. It's not going to be I don't know if you're going to get 4K Mario all of a sudden, right? Like that would be fantastic. But I think they're definitely going to focus on something. This has been their best selling and fastest selling console by far in decades. So I think that they want to. They've looked and they've seen what happened with Xbox One to the Xbox Series and compatibility and bringing people on board. The same thing with the PS4 to the PS5 and keeping a lot of that fan base on board. When you go ahead and you say, hey, potential future consumer, that Switch that's out now that maybe we're going to reduce the price of when we announce this new Switch, be comfortable and confident knowing that either one that you buy, we have this huge library of games that are available to you, kind of to Snipe's point on the compatibility piece. Like, yeah, I think we are only scratching the surface of like the SD card style cartridge, if you will, and how much memory that can hold. Um, and Nintendo, at least Nintendo alone, seem to be masters at how to create these crazy eccentric games and then put them into like an 8 gig file. Um, so I really look forward to seeing that. Yeah. Well, it's awesome. Um, yeah, I would say for just and I've played probably far less than Snipe, but I would say like on average because I vary between some of the more like indie style stuff versus like Nintendo first party. I would honestly say it can probably go close to 24 hours before I need a charge on that. And that's just me like spitballing because I was sitting there, I'm like 12 hours. No, it can go longer than 12 hours. Okay, that's yeah. I've never had that experience. So yeah, 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 and I think so. There's a couple things that come to mind with that. Like I think I heard this years ago. Was the potential of yeah having it render in something like 720 or 1080, but then in the docked mode, like the dock itself would contain the chipset and everything to go ahead and allow that to upscaling to happen. Because let's think about it. Like if you're going ahead, we're doing a little thought exercise here. If you're going ahead and you're talking about, hey, we're going to have this, AI based chip, if you will, the thing is going to eat through power like crazy. It's probably going to need extensive cooling to try and pack that into the Switch like handheld unit itself. You're automatically going to make it thicker. Again, kind of like Snipe was talking about when you look at the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally or any of those, like any of them worth their salt. And granted, those are advertised as like handheld PCs, not handheld gaming consoles or what have you. But those things, you're talking like three, what, two, 3/8 to almost maybe half an inch thick, if not thicker. So I could very easily see that being the trade-off that they had to negotiate is like, do we want to make the handheld unit itself bigger and heavier by doing that stuff, or do we want to go ahead and have this dock, which I honestly think also plays into the economics of it because while I would not even want to try and speculate on the numbers, I can almost guarantee you that there were folks out there that went ahead and I mean, I picked up my Switch secondhand, but it was like the full unit. So I could guarantee that there are folks who are going ahead and they have picked up a Nintendo Switch just like by itself kind of deal. Because you can just plug a USB C into the handheld and charge it. You don't need the dock. The dock is nothing more than just a port to funnel power into and for you to transmit that signal out via HDMI to your television. Like there's nothing else to it. So you could get a second part, a third party dock and it would do essentially the same thing. I think Nintendo would be wise to go ahead and take advantage of that situation by having all that mass and all that cooling requirement in this dock, their own like proprietary dock, so that way that almost handcuffs the individual, the consumer, when they're trying to go ahead and buy a Switch, even secondhand. They gotta have the dock to make the most of that situation, right? To make the most of that hardware, because from the reports that we've seen, they're targeting like PS4, Xbox One type performance. And now, mind you, now compared with what we're dealing with the current PlayStation, Xbox generations of hardware, that's not a lot, but it's also nothing to sneeze at by way of Nintendo speak, right? So that would be my bet is they would go ahead and they would have all that hardware, all that everything in the dock and make that a crucial component, the console attachment, whatever you want to call it, make that a crucial component just as much as the handheld portion so that yeah, like you're talking about, you can do it in handheld fashion where it'll be 720 or 1080. I don't think 1080 would be a stretch for them. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be good if they yeah, yeah. I mean, they've been saying for years, right? The Nintendo Online Store, I think is what the name was, right? Or like they've been saying for years how they wanted to go ahead and have that be um, like that. That's where your library would stay. They won't say, hey, backwards compatibility by way of the cartridge, but like, oh, well, if you make an online purchase, because that's what everyone's doing nowadays. If you make your online purchase, like that purchase migrates with your profile. But I think kind of to your point, Snipe, if they did the double screen thing, which I feel like we heard about, at least again rumored at some point, if they were to do that, that would open the envelope for them to then go ahead and have 3DS games brought into the Nintendo Switch Online library, right? So then it's not only, hey, well, if you didn't get to partake in the 3DS generation like I didn't, well, now you can still live those experiences through your, annual subscription to, or monthly or annual subscription to Nintendo Switch Online. So that kind of Nintendo, we love you, but f you pay me type mentality. So, and I'm not gonna lie, they would have me. I would still pay for a Nintendo Switch Online to go ahead and get that opportunity because yeah, I missed out on a lot of 3DS stuff, and now looking back, I was very busy during those years, but I would have liked an opportunity to try it out. And now I feel like a 3DS is so hard to come by. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's all definitely possible. Um, Circling back around just briefly to Mo's point with the external GPU, yeah, you look at it and it's like there's a couple out there like ROG and a couple make external GPU units, right? Isn't it the is it the Ally? I think it's the Ally where you can go ahead and they have like their own little proprietary port that you can like hook up to an external GPU, and of course the external GPU is like $2,500 or something crazy, and now all of a sudden your Ally is giving you the 4K gaming experience that you want, right? But a lot of that is reliant on that box again, the external GPU being like basically a full GPU in a case with cooling capacity and everything. If you're talking about Switch with or Nintendo with the success rate of Switch and having those numbers to come forth and say, hey, Nvidia, and we're picking on Nvidia because quite frankly, nobody else, Intel, AMD, they haven't really tapped into the AI space as much or as well with the frame generation stuff. Maybe FSR, if you really want to talk about that for AMD. Um, but I think when you don't have to look at a whole graphics card and literally just like a couple chips, like DLSS, Tensor Core chips or whatever, um, you know, 1, 2 generations old at this point, that can go ahead and focus on just beefing up the frame rate to do kind of what PS4 did with the checkerboard 4K stuff. Um, I think that presents a tremendous opportunity both financially, like I said, with Nintendo coming out being like, we've sold over 100 million units, like we're probably going to do the same thing, what can you do for us? So they can keep that cost low, but it's still going to be an improvement over the previous Switch. And yeah, that I think is where we're going to get to that $400-$500 price point, because it may be the first thing out the gate as far as a new PlayStation or a new Xbox. The new Switch may be the first thing out the gate that has onboard like AI tech, if you will, in the form of the DLSS, to go ahead and get better performance. Where we may see that, I think the only ones that have hinted at that are Xbox, and we don't know when they're going to announce that, right? So. All right, I'm winded from that conversation. What do y'all think? Yeah, worth a buy? Maybe keep an eye out for it. All right. I wanna bet right now that that is going to be the console that gets MowThemDown to buy a Switch or whatever the latest Nintendo console. Yeah, whatever they're gonna call Super Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Super Nintendo Switch. Let's go. All right, cool. Anyways, I don't know where my mouse went. All right, it's our favorite time of the show, the time we talk about the stuff that you guys really care about. So, like we said, today, March 2nd, what do we got coming out? We got Quilts and Cats of Calico on PC March 5th. The Outlast Trials on PS5 for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC March 5th. I think that's the Outlast multiplayer thing, right? Yeah. As Dust Falls is making its way. It had its, I guess 1 year term with Xbox. So that's coming out on PS5 and 4 March 7th. Uh, Snufkin Melody of Moomin Valley on Switch and PC March 7th. The Pirate Queen, A Forgotten Legend on Quest 3, Quest 2, and PC March 7th for all of our VR players out there. And let's see. Should we stop there? What is next week? Oh crap! I guess we're gonna keep going. Um, Aka R. Yeah, Aka R on PS5, and PSVR2 March 8th. Unicorn Overlord on PS5 for Xbox Series and Switch March 8th. And then WWE 2K24 finally making its way out. PS5 for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC March 8th. All right, mow them down. What you gonna be? Unicorn Overlord. Yeah, I did go ahead and I just took advantage of the sale that's going on right now. So I just bought Outlast. Um, right? Is it Outlast? Yeah, Outlast 1 and 2. Um, so you can check that out on the console share. So I have had some interest in the trials piece. Am I going to jump on it day one? Probably not, but that's just me. Snipe 90, what are you thinking? How did I know? How did I know? Yeah, and it's on Switch, so there you go. How many games? How many games did you say you're up to on Switch now? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. We got Mario Day coming up. I don't know what, if anything, they're gonna have available, on sale, but probably. I mean, they're probably not gonna have the new ones on there. I would love if Mario Wonder was on discount, but again, like I have such a backlog right now. I don't know when I'm even gonna get to that. So, all right, cool. So Snipe, since you're already up to bat, what you been doing? What you been playing? Where can the people find you? Ba-ba-bum. Okay. I'm upset I didn't get this Gears memo. Where was the Gears memo? Oh, was I okay? All right. Okay. Well, as long as like I said, as long as it was in there, I guess. Um, all right, cool. Mr. Mow them down. What you been doing? What you been playing? I'm not even gonna ask anymore. Where nobody can find you. Yeah. How are we doing on that beatdown challenge? We're gonna get there. We don't talk about that. Oh, the water. Okay. Oh yeah. The Switch has been charging back there, so I'll probably take a look on there and see what's available. Um, all right, yeah, yours truly, known as Ice on all things gaming, social media. With the setup right now, and for those that aren't aware, basically, my wife had some surgery, so she was immobile for a little bit. So we had to do like some unique setup, try to be strategic, like keep her closer to the bathroom and whatnot, so she wouldn't have to struggle too much. Bottom line, I have been sleeping here in the studio back there, and she's been in the room across from me in the bathroom, but that has worked out tremendously for giving me more game time, weirdly enough. So I went ahead and uh, I've been going after the Slay the Spire, trying to get a couple achievements and trophies on both. Just dude, it's just it pissed me off when I heard that Mark Cerny, uh, for those not aware, Mark Cerny, the basically the guy who developed the PS4, that he got the platinum in Slay the Spire, and I was like, mother flower. So I don't know why, it was just one of those things. Now I still play that to try and get all that. What else? I dabbled in quite a bit. I think last week I talked about playing some trials. When did we play Insurgency? Was that this past week or was that the week before? Okay. Okay. Well, I played a little bit more Insurgency on what's that on Xbox, just a little bit, nothing too much, and then otherwise most of the day today at least has been spent playing a short hike, which is an indie game. They say it's only like 4 or 5 hours ish for completion. I'm a little over 5 hours right now, just trying to wrap up the achievements on that one. Um, it's a cozy game. I'm not even gonna BS. It's just a cozy game, and it's a fun little something. It's kind of creative in how they took this one map. It reminds me of Mario Odyssey. The graphics are nothing like it, but it reminds me a little bit of Mario Odyssey. And like you come back to the same world, and it's like, oh, there are hidden objects and whatnot that you didn't see the first time around that you wouldn't have known had you not engaged with X, Y, or Z character. Because it's just one island, essentially one big island that you're doing stuff on. Nevertheless, it's a cozy game. If you guys have a chance, it's on. I know it's on Game Pass. I can't speak to whether it's on PlayStation. If it is, oh god, now I gotta go play that on PlayStation. Um, but yeah, it's a fun little something, a cozy game, like I said. Other than that, that pretty much wraps it up for us. Here for episode 110. I didn't say it off the top. I never really say it. Please, like, subscribe, share with a friend. Check out all the past episodes if you can, or at least the ones that we did good quality with editing and audio. Hopefully, this will be added to that list. Um, with that being said, make sure you share with a friend. We want to get some more eyes and ears on this stuff as we talk about what are the hot topic items in video games, including layoffs and the unfortunate nature of the layoffs, and what we are demanding from Nintendo in the future. With that being said, this is going to wrap up our episode. We thank you guys for listening. Remember, gaming's greatest generation is the one you guys are a part of. Say goodbye, guys. All right, later.